If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way, okay?
Is Trump trying to get the dollar weak?
Yes.
And why is he trying to get the dollar weak?
Because it's entirely consistent with what he's doing on tariffs. If you make your own currency weaker, it makes your imports more expensive. What's the idea of tariffs? To make his market less attractive. So the two are entirely consistent.
Guys, forget about the government shutdown or any other financial issue out there. This is the main one that you need to be paying attention to. And guys, it's alarming. The dollar index, right? The Dixie, it's down, I think, 10%. You see that number, 9.8%. Year to date, yeah, the dollar is crumbling right now, guys, and this has been the case for quite some time. Literally, all year, the dollar's gotten worse and worse and worse, and this is another thing worth mentioning here. The wealth gap is only widening, right? The wealth gap is freaking widening, guys, right before our eyes. The rich get richer, poor get poorer, because guess what? Poor people don't own assets.
For decades, the US dollar has been the king of money, but now that crown is slipping. Countries around the world are ditching the dollar, building their own financial systems, and some are even asking, is this the end of America's money power? Let's break it down. This story is bigger than just money. It's about power, politics, and the global future. And honestly, it feels like we are watching history in real time. So today we are diving into why the dollar is losing its grip, how other countries are striking back, and what that means for everyday people. I'll also react to some videos showing just how serious this shift is. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want to support, you can click the link in the description and buy me a coffee. It helps me keep creating these deep dives for you.
The US dollar is collapsing, and it's a direct result of the Trump Republican regime's policies that are gutting the US economy from the inside out. So here's what's happening, and stay with me because the plot thickens towards the end. The dollar just went through one of the steepest 6-month drops in history. And yes, I said history, not the last 5 years, not the last decade, not the last 50 years, in history. It's down 11%. It's stabilized for now, but experts say this is just a pause before the next crash because Trump's trade war and reckless spending have left America with twin deficits, a massive trade deficit and a huge federal budget deficit. It's like bleeding from two wounds at once. Stabilizing one wound only slows the death process. Here's the cultural problem. The Trump regime sees power as a zero-sum game. They believe America must win by forcing others to lose. So they impose tariffs and punish foreign governments that hold U.S. debt. So predictably, the global investors are now pulling money out of U.S. assets. And when they sell off the dollar, it sinks even further. The Federal Reserve faces a weakening job market because of Trump is cutting rates. Lower rates mean even less attractive dollars worldwide. It's a spiral caused by the Trump Republican regime. So why are they doing this? And this is where the plot thickens. Manufacturing can't come back to America if the dollar stays strong. So Trump is weakening the dollar. The same America First policies that sound patriotic are actually designed to devalue American currency, which will devalue savings and devalue retirement accounts. So what happens to manufacturing if the dollar keeps falling? Nothing, because America doesn't manufacture anymore. Economies evolve through 6 stages of development: farming, industrial, manufacturing, services, knowledge and digital, and finally, sustainable economies. The US is already at stage 5, while places like the EU and China are moving towards stage 6. So no one talks about taking America back to stage 1, farming. It is a ridiculous idea. So why try and drag it all the way back to stage 3, factories? People don't want to work factory jobs anymore, and advanced economies never move backwards. And that's why Trump's plan to revive US manufacturing is just stupid. You can't reverse decades of economic evolution, but you can destroy an economy and make everyone poor. And that is exactly what Trump and the Republican regime is doing.
We have another leading economist joining the growing chorus of leading economists that are screaming, like literally, that the United States is heading towards a major debt crisis. And he, along with others, is predicting this is going to happen in 2026. And he's talking about all the red flags that everybody is ignoring, way beyond increased prices and joblessness and no new job growth and so forth. He says it's all tied to the record-breaking price of gold right now. It's like at $4,000 an ounce. That central banks right now are accumulating so much gold because central banks are worried about two things: the value of the US dollar plummeting. They can see it happening, as well as the geopolitical tensions that are growing all since Donald Trump took office. And for some reason, central banks accumulate gold to hedge their bets because of what they see is happening. He says that Wall Street is behaving the same way they did before the 2008 subprime mortgage collapse, when so many Americans lost so much. Some lost everything. Back in 2008, Wall Street and those who owned stocks were exuberant. They were celebrating how many millionaires. They were all becoming millionaires with the manipulated stock markets. And it's happening again now. And back then they ignored all the red flags and did not adjust accordingly. And he sees that happening right now the same. He said that this economic collapse that he and others are predicting is going to feel, the 2008 subprime mortgage collapse is going to feel like Sunday school compared to what's going to happen next.
Mostly, when you look at data, you'll notice that the stock market returns and gold returns are actually inversely proportional, which means when stock markets fall, gold rises. However, surprisingly right now, both these things are rising. And it is believed that China is suddenly investing a lot in gold reserves, which means they could either be divesting in the US dollar thinking that it's volatile, or they could also be expecting a crash in the stock markets, as do a lot of other central banks around the world.
After World War II, the US dollars became the world's reserve currency, basically the money everyone trusted. Oil traded in dollars, international loans paid back in dollars, global trade settled in dollars. Holding dollars was like holding global security. But here's the problem: that dominance came with strings attached. The US started using the dollar as a weapon. Sanctions on Iran, Russia, and even allies, printing trillions during the pandemic, massive debts piling up. Other nations saw this and were like, wait, why are we letting one country control our economic future?
So with Trump destroying America and the value of the US dollar going down, which caused him to blink the last time around, because usually when there's chaos is happening, people buy US debt, so they flee to the dollar because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, so there's a lot of faith in it. But you see a lot of countries trying to shift away from that. You see the price of gold starting to skyrocket, people focusing much more on hard metals for security. Right on brand and time with all of that, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, better known as COMESA, has launched a new digital retail payments platform. So it's designed to let African countries pay each other in their own currencies instead of relying on the US dollar for trade settlements.
Economic summit just happened and Mexico was featured, meaning the de-dollarization of the world is literally at our doorstep. While we're running circles around Epstein, we're being encircled by a new economic order, and America and the West are literally too violent and cutthroat to be a part of it. Trump's instability and tariffs are accelerating de-dollarization of the world, and that was talked about at the BRICS summit, and they pushing back, and instead of using that dollar to do their trade, they just going around us, y'all. Just to catch y'all up, the BRICS nations is an acronym: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, but it's more than them. They got like 20 some odd member states now, and Mexico, had they not been our largest trading partner, a lot of people say would have been joined up. The BRICS is developing markets, and they're creating mutually beneficial deals. They have an entire business model. It's a Chinese Belt and Road Initiative versus the West Bomb and Raid Initiative. In other words, the rest of the world had to figure out how to make money outside of blowing people up. The West know how to do that. Israel know how to do that. America know how to do that. Regime change and private military contractors and our military industrial complex. Turns out you can only blow so much stuff up before the stock market start falling. The rest of the world has started to see that you can't rely on the West. The very same thing that even Vladimir Putin says, you can't trust them. They go back on their word. The same thing happened with our relationships with Iran, where first they was in a nuclear deal, then Trump took them out the nuclear deal, then it looked like he was about to negotiate it back in, and then he just blew up the diplomats. Israel started killing the nuclear scientists. Like, you can't do business like that. It's bad for money. But if somebody else comes up with a way to create trade in a peaceful, constructive way, then the world gonna get on board with that. Like, wouldn't you? You can't get to the Jetsons by doing business the way America do business. Like, you have to figure out a way to create power through building leverage and mutual beneficial relationships. And as the world starts to not trust America, China and Brazil and possibly Mexico and definitely parts of Africa are stepping into the void to create what's called a multipolar world power.
Enter BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now even more countries lining up. They are trading in their own currencies, buying oil without touching the dollar, and even talking about creating a new shared currency that is a direct challenge to US financial power. Right now, over 58% of global reserves are still in dollars. That's down from 70% 2 decades ago. Countries like China and Saudi Arabia are cutting deals in their own money. If this continues, it could mean less demand for US bonds, higher borrowing costs, and weaker economic influence. So what does this mean for everyday people? If the dollar weakens globally, imports get more expensive, inflation hits harder, and US loses leverage on the world stage. For the rest of the world, it means less dependency on one country's economy. It's like moving from one-man show to an assembled cast. Let's check out this video.
Okay, so the US government is not stupid, especially not the people who control our money. I think the US dollar is about to go through a massive transformation in the next couple of years that's going to affect your wallet and global trade as a whole. The US dollar used to be backed by gold. Up until 1933, you could actually walk into a bank, hand a person $1, and they would hand you a piece of gold back. It pretty much took and seized all gold from all US citizens across the country. But the US did still deal in gold with foreign entities. In 1971, we got completely rid of the gold standard, and we just floated on faith for about 3 years until we created the petrodollar. In 1974, the US and Saudi Arabia made an agreement that all oil sales had to be done within the US dollar, essentially making a de facto reserve, except not based on metal, based on the world's energy requirements. So that brought the dollar back to life, reinstating across the whole world that the US dollar was the currency to use. So for the past 50 years, the US dollar has been based on oil trade, up until that agreement quietly expired this year because Saudi Arabia wanted to start trading in the yuan and euro and other currencies. So where does that leave the dollar today? We're in a similar situation to 1971 when the dollar was just backed by faith and faith alone. But coincidentally, this year, the same year that the Saudi Arabia deal expired, we created a Bitcoin reserve. The United States has over 192,000 Bitcoin that it's collected over the years from seizing criminal operations. But you know who else has a giant Bitcoin reserve? Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin. Nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but a lot of theorists like to point to the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto in Japanese directly translates to Central Intelligence. But I don't think you have to look at fun wordplay here. I think you can connect the dots pretty clearly. The US government knew that oil reserves couldn't last forever, and maybe that's why we had so much pushback on green energy over the years, because our currency quite literally lived on oil. Like I said before, the people who control our money are not stupid, and this would have been an extremely clever way to retain dollar supremacy. So could the invention and adoption of cryptocurrency have just been a long strategic play by the United States to keep control over the world's finances? Maybe. It makes sense to me.
The fall of the dollar isn't going to happen overnight, but the trend is clear. Power is shifting. And the real question is, what comes next? Do we see a multipolar world with several strong currencies, or does something completely new like digital currencies take over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the US dollar will still dominate in 20 years, or is it game over. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more global breakdowns like this. So YouTube thinks you like this video over here. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Au revoir.